when we're talking about building relationships with other organizations, there's a way in which like you need to do that work within yourself. Sometimes you're going to be working in community with another organization. If you're going to be thinking like, oh, here's what we're doing, how could we help each other? Already having the like resilience of knowing what can we actually do and what's within our limits, who is here and what skills do they have. The work we do inside our organization is also the building blocks of solidarity with other organizations.
This is Micah from Community Kitchen, a community-powered collective that cooks and delivers meals to unhoused neighbors in Minneapolis.
We've been working really hard on becoming less hierarchical, becoming very like we ask everyone and everyone is a part of decision making. But there's also like a piece of community support within the organization. And I think that's what separates a really grassroots organization from a charity.
You're listening to Housing Last, a community-driven podcast exploring what stands in the way of ending homelessness in Dane County. Today, 5 grassroots collectives will share their blueprints on tackling homelessness from the bottom up. The groups come from Minneapolis and Greater Boston, where struggles against homelessness relate to those of Dane County. By exploring how communities elsewhere build resilience in face of poverty and oppression, we aim to discover new blueprints towards sustainable and community-driven solutions of homelessness in Dane County. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that this episode was a collective effort. We want to thank Kristen B. for transcribing the interviews. The narrative was designed by myself and Matvei. We are honored to blend the stories of WarmUp Boston, Witch City Action, Freedom Fighters Coalition, Sisters Camelot, and Community Kitchen Minneapolis. Our platform is sustained by the broader Patreon community, which you can join for free at patreon.com/housinglast. I'm your host, Isabel, and thank you for listening. Let's step into this conversation together.
We're not like a charity, a nonprofit. There's a reason people join WarmUp Boston and not like a shelter or a soup kitchen. We see things beyond that model. Obviously, that hasn't worked. They've been at it for quite some time, and homelessness is still here. So I think people are just excited to join something that wants to change things on a more structural level.
This is Miguel from WarmUp Boston, a radical survival program that serves the unhoused community. Like Community Kitchen, WarmUp recognizes that the current system is incapable of ending homelessness.
One of the things about Boston is we have the second highest rate of homelessness out of all other major cities. Of course, other major cities are much bigger than us and have bigger numbered populations, but per capita, Boston is number 2. And a lot of people, especially like on the right, will always point to like drug use and mental health conditions. But Boston has lower rates of drug use and mental health conditions than any other, like a lot of other cities that have higher rates. So it doesn't correlate very well. What does correlate and has been shown to cause homelessness is affordable housing. Affordable housing in Boston is pretty difficult to come by. It's one of the most expensive housing markets in the country.
Much of what the city is doing has to do with tackling a shortage of market rate housing. And that's going to be for people who have steady incomes, who are not coming from situations of homelessness and what have you.
This is Brad Hinkfuss, Executive Director of Housing Initiative, a nonprofit that provides permanent, supportive housing for those experiencing mental illness and homelessness.
There are bits and pieces in there that try to address homelessness. Those projects tend to involve, say, tax credits. I don't want to get into the full explanation of what that means, but it means, in short, a unit, let's say you have a building that's going to have 100 units of housing in it. There may be 10 or 15 that are set aside for lower income people, not necessarily homeless, just lower income. So there are kind of the larger housing picture, while it's kind of an emergency in and of itself, the portions of that address homelessness tend to do so only around the edges, and they don't do it at all in the way that my organization is trying to do it. They're serving, certainly there's some lower income people being served. I can guarantee you they are not people who are by and large been homeless for many years, who have severe and persistent mental illnesses. They're people who have come upon some rough times. But again, there's a broad range there of people when we're talking about housing, low income housing, homelessness.
While Brad talks about Madison, same things can be said about Boston's approach to affordable housing.
Yeah, we saw last year Governor Healy passed a housing bond bill, and a lot of people are celebrating that. It's estimated to bring 60,000 housing units over some amount of time. And even with these new housing units on the market, they're still going to come with a price tag. And that's not going to help people who are surviving on the street. It'll be a little bit easier for people who are already in housing, but
In episode 4, we explored why people struggle to survive on the streets in Dane County. We noted systematized violence as a major source of harm.
Current mayor and the mayor before that have been really anti-homeless. And we saw the epiphany of this during Randall Park when the Common Council voted to not evict that encampment, and the mayor went above them and had it illegally evicted anyway. When that encampment was broken up, 5 people died, because it's much better to have people together.
This is Pearl from Madison Homeless Union, a collective serving hot meals to unhoused people on State Street. Pearl also appeared in episodes 4 and 6.
Madison just wants to sort of sweep the problem under the rug. We can house people in the men's shelter and the Salvation Army for family and women, and then also the jail. The jail seems to be the second or third shelter that Madison is using.
the city and the state just generally do not want them on this land. And the sweeps are a way to make this as miserable and painful a place to live as possible.
Housing crisis and systematized violence are policy choices, and discriminatory policy is enabled by the broader cultural stigmatization of homelessness.
There definitely is a lot of anti-homeless sentiment in Boston. They do get a lot of calls, especially for fires. Literally, people trying to keep warm outside is an excuse for someone to call the police to have them swept. And it's completely ridiculous. I mean, how do you evict someone who's already evicted? One of the most like morally indefensible things you can be doing.
There are several people that I met in the very first encampment that I served at that I've just watched their mental health decline and what the jail and these systems have done to them, and the amount of trauma and harm that I'm not sure that they're going to be able to heal from this. And this is what these systems are doing. There's a lot of harm, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of help.
I think that during the pandemic, a lot of people lost their stability. And with that being said, out popped the scammers, the activist crowd, the people that, the organizations that are helping with the charity and whatnot. It's become a business to help the poor.
I don't think they want necessarily everybody to be in a house because, from what I understand, the more people need their services, the better they get paid.
This is Carveal and Peter from episode 6. While their claims oversimplify the operational nature of the charity complex, Carveal and Peter highlight an inefficiency within the system. Its current design prohibits it from resolving homelessness. Housing Last will explore these trends in a later episode, and in the meantime, we recommend the book, The Revolution Will Not Be Funded.
The reason that like homelessness isn't the top concern, the top priority of every government state agency is because like this economic system requires people to be homeless, requires unemployment. That's how it runs.
Despite oppressive circumstances, unhoused people persist, and so do the communities that choose to stand in solidarity with them.
The reason why I'm not homeless or anybody I know isn't homeless is because we have support systems and we have friends we can count on, and we have these relationships with people outside of our immediate sphere that can help us.
This is Skylar, an organizer with Which City Action, a direct action coalition in Salem, Massachusetts, for and by the homeless community.
The reason why people couch surf technically are homeless, but they're not, because they have relationships and friends, and that is the sort of thing that has completely fallen through for people who end up homeless.
As existing policies become increasingly insufficient, communities thread their own safety nets.
The world is getting, a lot scarier, and so people are, turning to organizations to find a community to fight back.
The vision that I had when I wanted to start with City Action was that I wanted to make it so that homelessness action was accessible to people and that people stopped being scared of homeless people. My hope was that we would be able to build friendships with these people and kind of be the types of people who would be willing to stick their neck out for someone, And I think that if we kind of change the way that we think about these things, or we help people access family members they're estranged from, or access their friends that they haven't seen in a while to help them out, we would be able to actually solve it in a long-term way, in that we would just make it so that people care about each other more and would be willing to help.
Compassion-based relationships are crucial to the resiliency of communal safety nets. Our collectives take it a step further.
We got so lucky, because I think most of the organizations that were formed during that time period started developing relationships with churches, and ours has been really incredible. They are so supportive of us. They want to know what we're doing. They organize volunteers and organize all sorts of ways to support us. And a lot of organizations, who are in churches start to realize, this is going to be harder than we thought it was. It's not as just fun to have all these volunteers here as we thought. Maybe sometimes they'll be a little bit of a mess, or maybe sometimes someone will come to our church and we won't know what to do about it. And so that's a really special relationship. And I think part of that too is that we put a lot of work into maintaining this relationship and communicating with them about why what we're doing, why it's important. And they're just a really special community that we've connected with.
The collective's foundational principles empowered them to flourish a tight-knit yet expansive communal network that Dane County's homelessness service system is yet to form. By examining the blueprints of Community Kitchen, WarmUp Boston, Which City Action, and 2 other collectives, we aim to synergize our own efforts in the fight towards housing justice. And hey, this is Matvei, host of prior episodes, just popping in to state the thesis. Let's dive in.
The biggest ethos I think about Which City Action is that we were the organization that was trying to make sure that the people who were being impacted by these laws and things were being directly represented. And so when we try to figure something out, we ask the homeless community first and foremost.
WCA and the rest of the collectives base their priorities on the needs of the communities they serve.
One of the asks that we had when we were first starting out a couple of years ago was somebody was living in their car, and she was like, what would be really nice is if I was able to do my laundry. And she came up with the idea of us doing a laundry day where we would take bags of laundry, go to the laundromat, wash them, and return them. And this was something that we did throughout the entirety of the encampment when it was still around, is that every Saturday, the first Saturday every month, we would go down there and we would take up everybody's laundry in, trash bags, take them to the laundromat and bring them back. It's kind of just like a same day laundromat. And like that was directly because of one of our unhoused members wanted their laundry to get done. And so it's like those kinds of things we're able to like know exactly what the community actually wants and act on it. And so things have changed since the encampment got swept, but now we're doing laundry carts, but we still do laundry day and we still fundraise for laundry day every month.
This type of call and response listening leads to needs-based organizing, ensuring that their community's needs and wants are met precisely.
It's harder to make a meal that they're asking for, but like, let's find a way. Like, people keep asking for lasagna and that's not within our capacity otherwise. But how can we like think about the small things that bring people like a feeling of being cared for, not like remaining in the business like we're meeting this basic need for you, but like being connected.
Once you listen, really listen, you can learn your community's direct needs. That knowledge enables informed and efficient action.
Our quorum, like we make sure that there's at least 2 homeless people voting at every vote. So I feel like this kind of makes sure that we're never, because the thing about charities is that they tend to kind of decide for people what's best for them. And that was the thing that we were seeing that was making the shelter system in our town kind of fail, because there were some very easy things that could have been done if they had just listened to the homeless people community that we advocated for, and now they changed it and it worked. So by making sure that like we have a platform for homeless people in town exclusively, that like we cannot make any organizational decision without them, I think it makes it so that our focus stays on what we're actually trying to do, instead of kind of getting caught up in like keeping information from them.
By grounding their communal ties in transparency, the collective builds integral trust. That further deepens the positive impact of every action Skylar's community chooses to take.
We'll be able to provide food, or we'll provide like money for transportation and things like that, and they'll return the favor by giving us concrete information about what's going on in the shelter, or what like policy actions like they want changed and what actions they want to see. And so it's this kind of like very good cycle of like getting quick feedback, because we always know what's going on in the city before it happens, because the homeless people, or I suppose mostly in the shelter before it happens, because the people on the street know what's going on in the shelter. And so we're able to kind of move much more quickly as a political organization because of our mutual aid, in that they trust us and we trust them. And so these like personal relationships we have with the people who get services, LifeBridge and things like that, are just like unbelievably valuable, because like those are our members who drive us and like make us give us the information of what we have to do and when we do it and how we do it.
Building radically trustful relationships is more than an impactful decision. It's about building a model that is exponentially greater than the sum of its parts.
Pretty much all of our money that we get as an organization goes directly into the fuel for the truck and the insurance for the bus and the certifications for the drivers, and you know what I'm saying? That part is actually, I think, it's pretty distinct. All of our funding comes from donations and from grant writing. Our main currency besides that is that we are working with almost exclusively trash that would be being thrown in dumpsters, like large quantities of that.
This is Cole, an organizer with Sisters Camelot in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Their focus is food justice and providing organic groceries to the community.
We do between 2,000 and 8,000 pounds of groceries per week, all year round. And it's almost exclusively organic as well, which is, just a real privilege.
Part of what makes our work possible is in the Twin Cities, there's an organization called Twin Cities Food Justice. And we're so lucky to be coming in on the backs of this. I started seeing what they were doing when I was a teenager. I was really into sustainable farming, and Twin Cities Food Justice started organizing gleaning parties where people would go out to farms and pick stuff that was going to get thrown away for local organizations. And then they started partnering with organizations all over the Twin City. They like have volunteers that can go to a bakery that has a bunch of extras and bring that over to, for example, a women's shelter. Sometimes like there are some low-income housing that they bring that food into like a common kitchen for that low-income housing. So then they have guaranteed food that will be there. And we were able to connect with Twin Cities Food Justice and get so that we don't pay for produce. And another really incredible part of that is that this is food that would go to waste otherwise. It's food that is fine in the next couple days, but you can't sell it because it would get bad too soon. There's that like beginning place where we already have some infrastructure in our city. And I think that that's like a really incredible thing to think about is like, not only is there a need for organizations like Community Kitchen who are serving unhoused people, who are serving these things, but there's room in cities to have a space for these groundwork organizations.
Grassroots collectives operate on a more local scale than the charity complex. To fully meet the needs of their communities, they must bridge their efforts.
I don't necessarily have like a huge group per se, and on the surface it may look like I do a lot of stuff by myself, but like everything I do, I rely on support of others, and I'm not coming up with the stuff that I'm giving away. I'm not coming up with it myself. So it ultimately it relies on the teamwork and the support of others. I lean on other people that I know that are doing the work, whether they're individuals or they belong to other entities that do similar work.
This is Ernst, an organizer with Freedom Fighters Coalition, a collective based in Lynn, Massachusetts.
If you want to do it on a bigger scale, then yeah, try to link up with other people and try to find folks that have like common ideas and like morals and principles, and get with them and try to figure out how you can help out folks in your community. Or if you don't have the time or the capacity to go that big, just see how you can help somebody out on your day-to-day. But ultimately, it's just put out the energy.
What I've noticed and heard in our like group of people that we quote, like the volunteer base plus the people we serve, is that there's like people feel really identified with Sisters Camelot as a place where they feel like connected to serving the community, and that feeling of feeling like there's a way that we're plugged into the larger group of community, that is actually really an essential part of how it is that people go from having, all the problems that are systemic to homelessness. And is it like people don't have a sense of being belonging and facility kind of on their own. And so we do provide that. It's just a way that we do that, which is pretty important. But yeah, no, we don't do policy work. We don't, we're just trying to make it so things don't end up in the garbage. And that is a very specific operation.
Charity and policy work remain a lifeline for those experiencing homelessness, but their structure tends to limit opportunities for creating communal networks and struggle to provide holistic support to those experiencing homelessness. And this is where solidarity-based communities thrive.
With me, I don't really have per se a target demographic. Honestly, anybody who needs any kind of support in general, if I can offer some sort of assistance, I look to do that.
While collectives like WarmUp Boston and Which City Action serve specific communities, Ernst chooses to reach those between the gaps.
Around the time where all the student-led groups were having like the encampments on their campuses to talk about what was going on with the struggle in Palestine. And I was bringing those goods that you gave me, and I was bringing them and distributing them to the different groups that were activated on their prospective campuses, right? So that's just an example. Like, I wasn't going to turn you down and be like, hey, like, I'm not going to help you bridge the gap, right? I'm not going to deliver these goods to these students because they're not homeless. Not to say that like other groups are like that, because I've seen them step up and help all kind of people as well. But it just seems like they more so have a direct focus.
Freedom Fighters Coalition furthers the principle of listening to people's needs. Having deep communal ties ensures that the network of solidarity-based collectives leaves no one behind.
I see someone asking for help, either directly or indirectly, and I can help you, I'm going to help you. Now, whether or not you really need the help, that's not up for me to decide. I believe in energy and karma, so if you're taking advantage of people that are being kind, then ultimately that probably won't play out in your favor. So I'm down to help anybody if I can help. So obviously it just comes down to consistency, right? Like, I started like during the pandemic, you know what I mean? When like everything was just like up in the air as far as like how things were going to work out. So obviously mutual aid became like a very big thing around that time, coupled up with just like being an empathetic person, right? And going through some of my own hardships, that I needed to rely on like community to be able to help me out. And then once I was able to get to my feet, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, I have to pay that forward. I got to be able to help out other people.
Once the gaps are filled, the next question becomes, how do we keep this going? How do we turn momentary relief into long-term power?
Having an organizational structure and having roles be defined and delegated. And we always have like a buddy with someone doing something. We have distro leads. Usually we have like 2 or 3 people helping kind of plan and coordinate our distros. We also have like several committees, like political education. We have like 2 chairs to help with that. And having that redundancy is one of the like most important ways we can like we can help each other out. And if someone needs to take time for themselves, they can know that they can take a step back and the work will continue.
Having rigid yet flexible structure safeguards WarmUp from emergency stops. If one group is unable to finish something, another steps in.
If you've got less sets of hands to help you out, you know what I mean? You can't go about how perhaps you distribute aid the same. So maybe it goes from you had a group of people that you were going out with on a weekly basis to pass stuff out, but now you don't have those people, but you know a community center that houses people that's looking for support, or you know another group that goes out weekly and does the same thing you were doing. You may not be able to actually physically be with them on that day of outreach, but you can reach out to that group beforehand and be like, hey, this is what I can offer you, or I see this is what you're looking to get. I can get that for you. Where do we meet? And there you go. There's the aid. You weren't there to pass it out, but you got the goods for them. You gave it to an entity who is going to be able to pass it out for you, and now they're doing the work. And you're supporting them, and they're supporting the people, and it's just like everybody at the end of the day is getting what they were looking for.
These collectives lack the power to end homelessness, but the relational capacity allows the network to remain afloat regardless of the surrounding circumstances, extending the collective's action beyond reapplying the same band-aids.
I think it's great that people get fed from everybody's organizations, but when you're feeding them boxed mashed potatoes as opposed to like, you know, a potato that doesn't have any pesticides on it, those things are like huge, and that gap is really big when it comes to health and health outcomes, especially for people who are unhoused. To be able to feed unhoused people that kind of quality of food, there's just a stigma around like, oh, well, beggars can't be choosers or something. Like, because you're homeless, you don't get to have a good quality meal. You gotta eat this white bread sandwich with, you know, some kind of deli meat. You don't even know what animal's in there, kind of thing. I think that's really a cool thing to think about, an important thing to think about when it comes to sort of just setting different standards for health, for equality of health that comes from food.
Let's pause here. Today, we've introduced 5 solidarity-based collectives from beyond Dane County. Next week, we will explore how the resilience of their network withstands the ever-growing oppression and how their blueprints are being followed by a local collective in the heart of Madison. And yes, you've heard that right. Not in 2 weeks, but next Wednesday. This episode was a collective effort. We want to thank Kristen B. for transcribing the interviews. The narrative was designed by myself and Matvei. We are honored to blend the stories of WarmUp Boston, Which City Action, Freedom Fighters Coalition, Sisters Camelot, and Community Kitchen Minneapolis. Our platform is sustained by the broader Patreon community, which you can join for free at patreon.com/housinglast. I was your host, Isabel, and thank you for listening, truly. Talk to you soon.